If Nate Danielson's available for the Sharks at 26, why they should be running to the podium to draft him with Ben Jordan of Smaht Scouting.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast of your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at San Jose Hockey Now, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, proudly a part of the Locked On Network, where we cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you got to do is just follow along wherever you get podcasts or subscribe on YouTube as well. So Ben Jordan from Smaht Scouting swings by as we start to get closer and closer to the end of our draft profiles. Talk about one Nate Danielson, a center from in the WHL from Brandon, and why, if the Sharks are, if he's available for the Sharks, they should be looking to try to draft a guy like him, because he's a big dude who can, I think he's just really starting to kind of figure out his game, and he feels very much like a Mike Grier type of player, but a skilled Mike Grier type of player. So let's get into it with our friend Ben Jordan from Smaht Scouting. And now we bring on Ben Jordan from Smaht Scouting to profile one Nate Danielson. Ben, how's it going, buddy?
It's going well. End of the NHL season is near, which means it's draft time.
By the time you're listening to this,
really fun time.
Yeah, the season will probably be over as recording this. It's Game 5 of Vegas, and I do not want to watch Vegas lift the cup. So I'm doing the whole if I don't see it, it doesn't happen type of situation, and just lying to myself here. So one person who probably doesn't lie to himself, I don't know. I would hope he doesn't lie to himself. That's the worst transition I've done. Nate Danielson. So if you don't know who Nate Danielson is, he's a forward for the Brandon Wheat Kings in the WHL. 6'1", 187 pounds, big boy. 68 games this year. He had 33 goals, 45 assists, 244 shots on goal. And Ben, I ask you, as I ask everybody, what makes Nate Danielson such an intriguing prospect?
Yeah, I think in this class, in the 2023 class, across the board, not just within the CHL, there's a lot of high upside. That's kind of the name of the game, is the high upside centers, especially at the top of the draft. But with Danielson, I think the intriguing part is that I've really had a hard time coming across any major flaws, which you see a lot of the time with these younger draft prospects that are only 17, 18 years old. So with Danielson, you're not getting a super flashy, dynamic, offensive creator, but you're getting somebody who's very cerebral, very high hockey IQ, engaged at both ends of the ice, and someone that's really not going to struggle in any one area. So I think that's kind of what draws you to him. So if you're a team that prefers kind of the safer play, this is the really high-end, high floor, kind of maybe lower ceiling option.
Okay, so I mean, you talk about he's been a safe player. He's also one of the older players, right? He is born September 2004. Wow. September 2004. So he's one of the older players in the draft. And, so you kind of feel like he should be much further along in his development compared to maybe some other players. But what about him makes him kind of that safe play with him? Is it, just kind of his all around game? Like you can just throw him over the board. You know exactly what you're going to get, shift from shift type of player from him.
Yeah, I think like kind of the safety really starts with the hockey IQ, and that's evident at both ends, offensively and defensively. And I think when I'm projecting a safe player, a big thing that I look at is the transition to the pro ranks. So I think I see a safe transition in that sense, where I don't see too many issues with him coming over as a younger player to the pros, not necessarily to the NHL, but playing pro hockey. He's got the size and he's got the hockey sense to keep up, where maybe other guys lose a step with their skating, but Danielson makes that up with the hockey sense. And the skating really isn't much of a drawback. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, there's no real one big flaw. He's just kind of really an awesome solid package that brings a lot of different intangibles to the table.
All right, so you mentioned the kind of the, I don't want to say low ceiling, but you feel like maybe he's closer to his ceiling than some other prospects, especially in this type of range. A guy like Jaden Braun, who you project has a much higher ceiling, but there's much more risk with him. So with a guy like Danielson, what do you think is going to be his kind of calling card, or what do you think he's going to be known for once he becomes like a professional hockey player, like AHL, NHL? Is he going to be kind of a potential energy third line forward? Is he going to be kind of a middle six guy for you? What do you kind of project him to be and kind of be able to kind of lean on going forward?
Yeah, I'd say like right now I'm seeing him kind of more as a higher end middle six player. Like I know in my past episodes I like to give kind of an NHL comparison so people have a sense. Like I see a lot of characteristics like Brock Nelson, just kind of that higher end guy who gets to dangerous areas, and you're kind of just like, how the hell did he get open there? And they just kind of fade in through the back, and you don't really see him, and they're right there. They're Johnny on the spot, and they're there to make a play and ready. Similar to Brock Nelson, I think the one area that he kind of loses the offensive hype and glamour is with his puck handling. His hands just aren't nearly as good as a lot of the other higher end centers like Will Smith and even Oliver Moore, Bedard, obviously, guys like that. I think that's kind of where he loses the glamour, is just the plays in tight, right, where he's able to finagle a puck between guys' skates, under sticks, and kind of plays like that. But he's so smart that his production just feeds off that. And I honestly think if he was in a different situation outside of Brandon, with maybe better finishers on his wings, and better kind of supporting staff with him, that his assist total for sure, but maybe even goals and by that metric point total would be a lot higher than it was now.
So give us, is Brandon, I mean, I don't watch a ton, I kind of keep up. I don't watch a ton. So what is it with Brandon? Is he kind of having to do a lot of this stuff by himself? Kind of like, what's his situation with Brandon in the WHL?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that he's kind of pressed to try and do more himself, but he does a really good job carrying the puck along the wall and through the neutral zone, which just because of nature draws a lot of defenders to him. So that's kind of where he's gotten his playmaking rep, is that he draws so many guys to him that leaves other guys open. He's really good at finding them, and they haven't put it in the back of the net. So I wouldn't say that he's necessarily tried to tailor his game to what's going on around him. But like, if you look at other situations, like another team in the Western Hockey League, for example, Kamloops is loaded with weapons up and down the wing in the top six, where if Danielson may have been playing with them, a couple more of those plays end up in the back of the net, and the situation might look a little bit differently. So I wouldn't say he's necessarily tried to carry the mail himself, but just based on the natural progression of junior hockey and roster turnover, Brandon's kind of suffered in that area.
All right, before we finish up with Ben and we talk about Nate Danielson, kind of his fit in the prospect pool, his timeline, all that fun stuff, why he feels like a Mike Greer type of pick, if he's there, do need to take a quick break. Talk to you guys about our friends over at eBay Motors. And you guys know, for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With the eBay Guarantee Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your car to the My Garage and look for the green check to know that the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game. And when you shop on eBay Motors, it's going to be full of confidence. With over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Okay, so I mean, you mentioned the high floor and the kind of the low ceiling. So, what do you think is going to be maybe the one kind of skill he needs to really work on? I know you said he didn't have a lot of flaws, but what do you think is going to be the one thing he needs to continue to work on to develop as he progresses through his hockey career?
Yeah, so the one thing that I've noticed a lot is with his shooting. So he does a really good job avoiding the kind of low danger shots and just and instead he really tries to push the envelope and get passes to high danger areas and get himself to high danger areas. So I think it just the decision making, like it's just
Mhm.
the confidence thing, which I think will come the more he plays. But it's that split second. He does a great job. He's like, okay, I'm at the half wall, right along the wall. I'm not just gonna risk this on net just to get a shot and just cause. But instead, I'm gonna look to the middle and find a guy there, and just getting rid of that kind of hesitancy right away, and just being quicker. That'll only be amplified as he keeps going up the ranks and up
Yep.
past junior hockey as the game gets quicker and he has less and less time. So I think just the decision making um, aspect, especially in the offensive zone, but also in the defensive zone when he's not the main puck carrier, when he's making a breakout pass, just getting that off his stick quicker, the decision making. And I think it stems from the confidence because you see him and he can do it. And the hockey IQ is really there and he sees the plays, just got to make them.
All right. So, I mean, when he goes, do you think he when he finally makes the NHL, do you think he will be a center in the NHL, or do you think he might be one of those guys that transitions to wing? Because I mean, 6'1", pretty good base to start with here. You said he doesn't have much kind of flaws in his game. Do you think he's going to be a potential second or third line center for a team?
Yeah, totally. I think he's got the build to be a center. I mean, the anticipation is so good with him. Super quick stick, reading passes, and reading off players. He's good in the face-off circle. The awareness, keeping his head on a swivel, the commitment to playing defense, which you don't see all the time. I know we talked about Riley Heidt a little earlier on in the season, where I'm a little more skeptical about him as a centerman going forward. But with Danielson, I think there's a solid foundation there for an NHL center.
Yeah. So, I mean, assuming from all that what we've heard, Sharks are probably going to be picking Will Smith at number 4, right? If they go Smith Danielson, if he's potentially there at 26, adding 2 potential C, how would you feel if you're a fan of a team and you walk away with Smith and Danielson as your first 2 picks in the draft?
Well, I'm a proponent of drafting and building down the middle, and the Sharks are at that stage where they're starting to rebuild and put new pieces together. So I think coming away with 2, well, a high end center and a high end middle 6 center would be a great start. I mean, you win with building your back end and building down the middle, and a guy like Danielson is a guy that you win with. So if they were able to, I don't personally think Danielson will be there at 26. I kind of see him more as like a late teen type option. That's kind of where I'm mocking him and projecting him, maybe somewhere 15 through 18. But if San Jose came away with those 2 players, that's quite the start.
Yeah, then you pair that with Biced last season, who I think most of us, when that pick happened, was like a little bit of a head scratcher, but I think we're all kind of eating a little bit of humble pie this season after the season Biced just put up in the SHL, and you're starting to feel a lot better about the Sharks down the center. So, and then
Absolutely.
if Bordeleau turns into anything there, then you kind of start to you can see the future, at least for down the center. So, you mentioned, kind of a Brock Nelson type of player. So where do you kind of like, I hate to put a number, what type of point projections are we looking at once he kind of hits his peak and, kind of hits his prime as a player for Nate Danielson?
Yeah, I think like at his peak, kind of similar to Brock Nelson, it took him a little bit to kind of get there, especially with the goal scoring. Like the details and the defensive play were always there, and that's what keeps you in the NHL, right? Like not making the big glaring mistakes. But I think that honestly helps, and that kind of alleviates some of the pressure to produce, and you can kind of just fill into that slot naturally as a producer and see where you fall. So I think maybe a little less goal scoring upside, similar point totals, a little bit better distributor for Danielson. So somewhere in the 20 to 25 goal range, 70 to 75 point range, I think would be like, if you had the optimistic outlook, then you got a pretty good producing second line center. So somewhere in that range, I think, would be his peak.
I mean, that kind of sounds a lot like Logan Couture too. I mean, like, especially nowadays, if you get basically Logan Couture's replacement, that you're probably feeling really good about. And it sounds like too, it's the way he scores goals. Is it kind of those greasy, like, I'm just bigger and better than the defenseman and type? Is that kind of his goal scoring, or is he more of a kind of shoot from the outside, or does he have a wide variety of goal scoring ability?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say he's kind of in the muck as a grinder. Like, he scores a lot of different ways. He's shown his skill at times this year. I think a big thing is just the tenacity and understanding, like, positioning. Like, the biggest characteristic that you can lump a lot of his goals into are just like understanding stick position and understanding how to tie up opponent's sticks, as well as how to keep his stick free, which would just get him so many better opportunities in and around the net. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's like physically, beating his opponents and crashing the crease type ordeal, but kind of like just like in the slot and between the dots, like he's really good at just finding pockets of space and getting his stick free when he's in goal scoring opportunities.
So, all right, where would he kind of fit, I guess, in the Sharks pipeline, right? We talked about Beasted, who, again, bit of a head scratch last year. We're all like, wow, Beasted's amazing. You have Eklund, you're going to have most likely Will Smith. Where would you kind of put him in the Sharks prospect pool there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Danielson's kind of one of those guys that really could fit any prospect pool. Like, there's some guys that I look at and I'm like, wow, I really picture that guy in X team's jersey. Danielson's a guy that every team is always looking for. You're always looking for that kind of centerman. So I think he fits with the Sharks just as well as anyone in terms of a team that's looking to kind of I feel like he could be an early piece to make the Sharks roster when they really start kind of turning it over and the younger guys are really starting to get into the lineup, where I think because he brings so many other details other than the production, that you're really comfortable just kind of penciling him in and giving him a good long look. So I think that's a real positive for the Sharks and other rebuilding teams, where that you're not kind of stagnating development by putting him in. And he's also there with the other young guys that kind of come up all together, but less dynamic than should they take Will Smith, Eklund, Bordelot, kind of not as shifty and maybe to the more casual fan, like, quite honestly, not as exciting. But all the more important. Yeah,
I mean, you see these guys, yes, they're not the sexiest names, but like just having a guy who the coach trusts, and we know GMs and coaches, they love guys who they know exactly what they're going to get every time they put him over the boards. They don't have to worry about him, and that is, especially for a young guy, that's your path to success, is just not messing up going forward type of thing. And
it's totally true.
So you talk about his timeline. You think he could be a guy who maybe only spends like a year in the AHL, and before he's maybe kind of starting to make an NHL impact, and kind of just getting used to the size and the speed of professional hockey, but just because you think of his details are that good?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, in terms of a timeline, like, I think he goes back to Brandon next year, plays one more year in the WHL, obviously, because he's not going to be on the Sharks and he's in the CHL, can't go to the Barracuda. So one more year in Brandon, full year in the AHL, and then I think he's got a very decent shot at cracking an NHL lineup in that D+3 year.
Makes sense. All right, guys, before we finish up with Ben, we talk about some of the Smaht Scouting's rankings, which rankings maybe Ben didn't agree with his constituents, kind of talk about their thought process behind some of these guys. Do want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Again, proudly a part of the Locked On Network, where we cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, just follow along wherever you get podcasts, or you can subscribe on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow with Brock Otten to talk about Quentin Musty and why he is such a tantalizing player, but There's definitely some red flags with him, and he's going to be one of the most interesting players in the draft, kind of where he goes, where he could be a potential top 15 guy, or he could be an end of the first round type of guy. And there's going to be, all it takes is just one GM to kind of talk themselves into it. So make sure you guys, again, follow along wherever you get podcasts, or you can subscribe to Locked On Sharks wherever on YouTube as well. Let's talk Smaht Scouting. So I enjoy this time because you're getting all of everybody's final rankings, right? Smaht Scouting put theirs out. We had Elite Prospects, everybody's favorite internet scout is putting out their rankings. So Smaht Scouting put out theirs, and I'll go through the top 10 super quick, and then we'll kind of talk about some guys, at least one guy who really stood out for me for his ranking. And then we'll talk about some guys that you maybe disagreed with your constituents on. So number 1, of course, Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli, Michkov, number 3, Leo Carlson, number 4, Zach Benson, number 5, who you're kind of seeing he's lining there a little bit more often than not. Future Shark Will Smith, Oliver Moore at 7, Alex Sandin Pellikka at number 8, which I enjoy. Gavin Brindley up at number 9. Love it for the Short Kings. And then Dmitry Simashev at number 10. But I want to start with your guy ranked at number 20, David Reinbacher. So who's presumed to be a potential 5, 6, 7, at least in the top 10 pick. You guys have him at 20. Why do you hate David Reinbacher personally, Ben?
Well, there's no personal hatred, never, of course. He's a first-round prospect, right? How could you say such a thing? No, but I think, honestly, it just comes down to kind of like I talked about with all the dynamic offensive players. It's not a hidden thing that this class doesn't necessarily favor defensemen, right? Yep. So as much as we aren't necessarily as high on him as others, there's also just so many guys that we'd rather take ahead of him. And our thinking really comes down to just upside. Like, I think David Reinbacher is as a big of a guarantee of a top 4 defenseman as there is in this draft class. If you want a right shot, reliable second pairing defenseman that can play on a second power play, can kill penalties, you can trust him in any situation, close game, you name it. That's David Reinbacher. But we really, our philosophy has always been
defenses for nerds score points.
Not so much that, but just upside trumps all, right? And I think that's shown with our defensemen that we had ranked higher with Sandin Pellikka and Dmitry Simashev, especially Simashev. I think there's just massive upside there. And then the next gap before we hit another defenseman is just filled with forwards that we feel have higher upside and don't have the risks to weigh them down. And ultimately, we slotted Reinbacher in at 20 because at that point, maybe the risks kind of outweigh the upside. And at that point, we're really sold on just taking the floor and taking the sure thing. So would I be surprised if Montreal stepped up and took Reinbacher at 5? A little bit, a tiny little bit, but not really. Arizona at 6, and beyond that, wouldn't be surprised at all. I know he's been getting a lot of love from many other places, but that was kind of our reasoning behind it, and kind of our team philosophy.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I had David St. Louis on. He did his profile on him, and he explained, I think at Elite Prospects they look more for the defensive side of the game, and I think that's why they have him ranked. I believe it was number 9 with their final ranking. And I think I'm with the Smaht Scouting team where I mean I've said it a million times. Defenses for nerds, go score points, and I think you look at. You have 4 or 3 other defensemen ranked in front of him, and Alexander Sandin Pellikka, Simashev, and then I think you have Gulyev, who's ranked at number 16 as well. And all those guys provide that potential. Big key is potential. First pairing offensive defenseman type of guy, and maybe the defense isn't quite there for some of those guys, but I think you can kind of live in a world where these guys are potential, 60, 70 point players again, if everything goes right, and almost the Eric Carlson motto of just score a bunch of points and we'll figure out the defense right with somebody else, right?
Totally. Well, I think like a personal thing for me with the draft has always just been like, go take big swings, and that's why you pay your scouts. Like, pay your scouts to go find these guys. Like, I have always been a proponent of drafting for skill. Like,
Yep.
Always draft for skill, because when you're trying, you need skill. You also need some physicality, and you need all these different things.
But it's easier to find
the most
physical...
expensive thing to find and pay for is skill when you need it. It's the most expensive in the free agent market. You overpay in salary, you overpay in term, and when you're looking to get these guys via trade, it's expensive. So the only way you ever get these cornerstone franchise offensive producing players is through the draft. So take a swing on them, and then go trade for Brett Pesce and go trade for Noah Hannafin and round out your team that way, right? Like, that's always been my philosophy. So that's also just another way of kind of explaining what I just did.
Yeah, it's harder to find skilled players than it is to find big players. So, you could find big players. Go find me some skilled players. So, who were some guys where I know you guys had your big kind of round table? You guys all kind of, put up your fights. Who were some guys that maybe you had ranked a little bit higher or lower than your constituents, and you think the rest of them are bozos for the way that they I know you off air you called everybody a bozo. No. Who are some guys that you're kind of a little puzzled by their ranking?
Yeah, well, there's a couple guys from the Western Hockey League that I've been pounding the table on all year that no one's really backed me on, which is fine. The first one's Braden Yeager. I mean, I know he started the season in the top 10, and he had a disappointing season. But he's really plummeted down a lot of people's rankings, including ours. And I don't think
he 26 would be the Sharks pick if they went exactly from your ranking. So sorry.
Yeah. So with Yeager, what goes really unnoticed, and something that I've picked up on just because I've watched so much of him throughout this season, is he's so good at just making these small plays, chips up the wall, keeping plays alive, keeping offense in the zone. Just like the small redirect on a pass, he keeps so many different plays alive, and he's such a threat with his shot that I think it's going to be really hard for some teams to pass up on him, and I'd be shocked if he fell past 15 in the real draft. And he's another guy that I think has a really good chance to play center ice in the NHL, which is extremely valuable. And he's another guy that's got details up and down the ice, in the defensive zone especially, and in the offensive zone like I just detailed. But it's really not a sexy thing, but the small area plays, he does such a good job keeping opportunities alive and generating so many extra scoring chances that other players just wouldn't. And that's something that's a testament to hard work and just not giving up on the play, which translates at any level. That's a between the ears thing, and not a just because it's junior hockey thing, right? So, so that's one guy that I'm higher on than the constituents at Smaht. Another guy is Samuel Honzek, who I believe we had at 24, or maybe 27 if I'm not.
He's at 24. Yep.
Okay, 24. Yeah. So he's another guy that's just super well rounded. And I've been super impressed. This is his first year over in North America. His rights were owned by the Vancouver Giants. Came over from Slovakia before this season. Started out a little slow, was adjusting to the smaller ice, and then unfortunately suffered that really brutal injury at the World Juniors, where he got his leg sliced open all the way down to the bone, which was really gnarly. So he missed a bit of time, but the production was there again on a kind of subpar Vancouver team. And he's a guy that doesn't get enough credit for using his reach. I think that's a big thing in junior hockey, is not everyone has the size advantage that he has over his peers. And he really pairs the stick work and the reach with his really good agility, and he's just so good at protecting the puck, especially in and around the crease, and generates so much that way. which I think if he just continues to get stronger, fill out that body, like that's a super, super important role. I think he could even play like a net front type position on the power play, kind of similar to like what John Tavares does. He's really strong below the goal line, really deceptive with setting up plays, and really good at finding guys in tight. Like he'll feather passes through skates from below the goal line and different angles, and he's super creative there, which I don't think he gets enough credit for. So those are a couple guys that I'm higher on, that I've been banging the table on all year. And then a couple guys that I'm lower on.
Give me one guy you're lower on. So one guy that
okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think the big one's Luca Pinelli for me.
Okay.
So a lot of people, I feel like, have been getting drawn in with the skill and just his ability to kind of slip out of checks. But I really haven't seen him do much with that. Like he's really good at pivoting around defenders in the corner and along the boards, but once he's in position to make a play after slipping a check, I haven't really seen too much. And for someone that's kind of smaller frame like that, you really need like those dynamic offensive qualities, kind of like guys like DeBrincat and Caulfield have, where they're either shoot first guys or really good skaters or dynamic puck handlers that can create in small areas, and don't necessarily need to rely on the physicality. But Luca Pinelli is a guy where, like, when he's at his best with Ottawa, he's engaging physically in puck battles. He's got a good stick, kind of like Matthews, where he'll just kind of like drape in the back and he'll lift your stick and take the puck off you. And he's kind of gone that way, but there's not really that one thing that really pops for him offensively. So I have a really hard time projecting that to the NHL, where I'm like, okay, if he's this small and not really engaging in this type of game, what else is he doing? I don't really see him being able to control play on a power play. The puck handling skills aren't there. The shooting's not there. So I just have a really tough time with the projection there. So I get why people are high on him. There's intriguing tools there, but I don't see a way that it projects at the next level. So that kind of diminishes his value as an NHL prospect as opposed to an OHL player.
Makes sense, right?
That's the way I see it.
Yeah, if you're that small guy, you have to have that like one elite thing that's going to translate for you going into the NHL. So we'll get you out here on these last two questions. So which guy in the top 10 are you a little like, would you be a little queasy about if your team drafted him? Don't say Will Smith to make me cry.
Man. I think maybe Ryan Leonard.
I've heard everyone is like Ryan Leonard might be better than Will Smith, but all right, make your Ryan Leonard.
To be honest with you, I'm equally as queasy about Ryan Leonard as I am Will Smith. I just picked Ryan Leonard for your sake.
Okay.
I'm kind of a bit queasy about all those guys just because they've all really helped each other in so many different ways and complemented each other so well to kind of fill the holes. Like Gabe Perreault is not a play driver. He's there to facilitate, and he does an amazing job. With that, Ryan Leonard's the big body. He can shoot. He'll get to the dirty areas. And Will Smith's kind of like the Swiss Army knife, really dynamic passer, skater, playmaker, where they kind of all just complement each other really well. And they're all obviously not going to be on the same team playing on the same line once they get out of Boston College. So I'm honestly a little bit nervous about the projecting of all of them. And I don't think Gabe Perreault goes in the top 10. Didn't want to pick Will Smith for you, so process of elimination.
Can I offer you one combination of Will Smith and William Eklund with Daniel Gushchin just slinging home shots right there? Yes, it's a small king line, but that line would be really fun. That's my
no, totally. And well, I'm not saying that individually.
Yeah,
they're not going to be really, really successful players. I just like it. I really wonder about the landing spot for all of them, which will really dictate kind of more how I feel.
No, it makes sense
going forward.
Yeah, you haven't seen those. We won't see those guys away from each other until they basically get to the NHL for a good chunk of them. All right, final question: where does Nate Danielson go in the draft?
I will say number 19.
The Chicago Blackhawks.
19,
So
yeah.
Bedard
That's where
and
I had a
Danielson.
mock to the Chicago Blackhawks.
That would be a pretty solid start. You're getting the generational talent, and you're getting your future second line center there. Pretty good start with Krasinski on the back end. That's a pretty good start there. So, Ben, you said it all. Where can the people find you?
Yeah, on Twitter, my handle's on the screen. If you're listening on podcast, B Jordan NHL on Twitter, all things hockey. I'm always discussing, interacting with people, all things prospects, NHL, you name it. And then you can find my work on smahtscouting.com. We just put up our final rankings as we've discussed here. And then WHL, OHL players, I've got reports up on a bunch of those guys. So check them out.
Ben, I'll see you in like 2 weeks, buddy.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Ben. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed my conversation with Ben Jordan from Smaht Scouting. Make sure you guys are following with Smaht Scouting and what they've been doing, following along Ben as well. But if the Sharks can grab Nate Danielson with pick 26, I think you're going to feel really, really good about Will Smith, Danielson down the middle. You throw in B-Sit from last year, and all of a sudden that center position and the prospect pipeline looks way better than it did 6 months ago to a year ago type of situation. So, I don't know if Danielson's there, but the draft's weird and you never know who's going to be available for you. So, like I said, we'll be back tomorrow to talk Quentin Musty with Brock Otten. So make sure you guys follow along wherever you get podcasts, and you can watch on YouTube as well. You can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Especially going to want to follow the Instagram account. Going to be in Nashville next week, so you're going to probably want to see some behind the scenes footage. I'm going to be posting them to the Locked On Sharks Instagram account, so make sure you guys follow along there. You can also follow me on Twitter at myfryhole. And until tomorrow, bye, friends.